Hi, so I'm going to introduce Charles Swanson. He's going to talk to you about landscape water budget. So Charles works in the landscape irrigation program at Texas A&M. He is a state of Texas licensed landscape irrigator and conducts statewide trainings and short courses for irrigation professionals, municipal employees, and state agency personnel in landscape irrigation and water conservation with the Texas A&M School of Irrigation. Currently manages the daily operations of the Texas Evapotranspiration Network, the WaterMyYard program, and coordinates various testing and evaluation programs for landscape irrigation products such as drip irrigation, smart controllers, soil moisture sensors, and sprinklers, and serves as a member of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Irrigators Advisory Council. Charles has a Bachelor of Science and a Master's of Agricultural Systems Management from Texas A&M University in College Station. Welcome, Charles. Thank you for
being here. Good morning. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen there, Stacy?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. All right, thank y'all for having me this morning. Like I said, my name is Charles Swanson. I work for AgriLife Extension based in College Station, Texas. And today I'm going to be talking about a program we have in landscape irrigation conservation, the WaterMyYard program. So how we can maximize water conservation to homeowners and end users across the state. So the problem we have is that we often find homeowners do not know how to irrigate their yard. It seems like a simple enough problem. You know, everybody knows how to turn their controller on, but most homeowners typically don't know how often they should be irrigating or how long they should irrigate for. Lots of cities have ordinances restricting days per week, so that kind of helps a little bit. But then on the days that homeowners do irrigate, we want to make sure they don't have excessive run times and end up with, you know, water going down the street, because then if it's not going into the grass, into the soil where the plant can use it, then it's wasted water. So that's the problem we're trying to address here. So the challenge is, if we look at the history of different irrigation programs across the state where we've tried to recommend irrigation to end users, for example, if we look at like Texas ET users can go online and sign up for notifications, or just simply use the online tools and determine how much irrigation they need. Well, when they use that tool, it tells them how many inches of water their yard needs. And that's fairly simple to calculate for us if we have the right kind of weather data. The challenge is you go to the controller and your irrigation controller asks you, well, how many minutes or how often do you want to irrigate? The controller doesn't have a direct input for inches of irrigation. And so what we need to know is, how are we applying that water? And this is where it gets really complicated, is because our sprinklers apply water at very different rates. If we're using spray heads, those can apply water anywhere from 1 inch to 1.6 inches per hour. Different types of rotors, anywhere from 1/4 inch to 3/4 of an inch per hour. And if you're using drip irrigation for your turf grass yard, that has a wide range in application rates, anywhere from 1/4 inch to almost 1 inch of water. So if you don't know how much water your irrigation system applies, it's very difficult to take a recommendation of 1/2 inch of water per week and give that to a homeowner to program their controller. So some background of the program is we developed WaterMyYard back in 2013. Originally, this was a project done in collaboration with the North Texas Municipal Water District. And the goal of this, like I said earlier, was just to improve upon existing programs that we had, where instead of saying, you know, you need 1/2 inch of water per week, we could simplify that and tell the end user, you need to run your irrigation system 15 minutes this week or 20 minutes twice a week. And so simplifying all of that to create this program, and at the same time, try to incorporate as much information from the local city utility, whoever is in charge of the water, so we can incorporate things like watering restrictions into these recommendations that gives us a bonus that you make sure that the homeowners are following local ordinances, they don't get in trouble, but then they're also watering correctly based on their area. So just some background if you're not familiar with the WaterMyYard program. It is a fee-based program. It's sponsored by cities, utilities, and water districts. And when we say they sponsor the program, we get no funding through AgriLife Extension directly from state for this program. So it is completely funded by the sponsors. So the sponsor will purchase the equipment. Often that means they need to put a weather station, maybe multiple weather stations in their service area so that we have the correct weather data to calculate irrigation need. And then they help pay an annual program sponsorship fee just to help cover the cost of website maintenance, communications, and those type of things. So it's very important that we have a local city utility sponsor. That way we have a good collaborative program being built in each service area. That way the city has an invested interest, not just us through Extension promoting this program. And by the city being the sponsor of that, it helps make it to where this program is offered at no cost directly to the end user. So if a homeowner lives within a sponsored service area, they can go online, create a profile, and begin receiving watering recommendations that first week. And so here's a current list of our program sponsors. Like I said, started this program out in North Texas with the North Texas Municipal Water District, but we have grown across the state. Lots of sponsors in the Metroplex area. The Lower Colorado River Authority sponsors quite a few service areas in the Central Texas area. Upper Gulf Coast and the Houston, Fort Bend County area sponsored by the subsidence districts there. And then new sponsors we have out in West Texas, High Plains Underground Water District. They sponsor the greater Lubbock area, as well as we have individual cities, the city of Irving and the city of San Angelo. And then us through Extension, we cover the local Brazos Valley area for our use. So we have all the sponsors, and so that's 10 sponsored service areas. But some of those service areas are broken into multiple micro areas. You can see here that we actually have a total of 46 weather stations across the WaterMyYard program. And these are full ET weather stations. You can see here shown in my picture here. And an ET weather station, the difference is that records, we have a temperature, humidity sensor here. We have a wind vane here, an anemometer here, measure wind. But then we also have a pyranometer, which is a solar radiation sensor, which is very important in ET calculation. And then, of course, we measure rainfall on site to know, did we receive anything supplemental to irrigation? And so in our program, like I said, we have 46 ET weather stations, and in certain areas, we actually have additional rain gauge networks to help support the weather stations. We know ET may not vary so much across different parts of a city. However, the amount of rain you receive can vary quite significantly. So in certain parts of the state, we do have what we call these little rain gauge networks where we can tie into the central ET station, but use local rain gauge data to really fine tune the watering recommendations for the end users. And so currently, as of April 1st, we have 28,000 homeowners or user accounts, however you want to look at it, to the program. And so as we go into the summer months, we expect those numbers to expand quite significantly as we begin further outreach in our service areas. So here's the WaterMyYard website. If you haven't been to the website in a while, we did update our website recently. And so you can go to watermyyard.org, and we have lots of information there. And to begin using the program, you can kind of click to get started, and you enter in your address, your city, your zip code, and that lets us determine, or lets you determine, are you in a sponsored area that does have ET and weather data available for us to use for irrigation recommendations. And so by doing that, it ties your profile directly to the closest weather source, or it can notify you that unfortunately, maybe you do not live in a sponsored area. So the tool isn't available to you. And so getting back to how the tool works, like I mentioned earlier, one of those important things we need to know in determining how much water we need is how much water do our sprinklers use, or how much they apply when we turn them on. And so we call that the precipitation rate. And so if the homeowner knows their precipitation rate, sometimes this is given to them if they have a new irrigation, so they can find that on their irrigation design. Maybe they've gone out and done a little tuna can or a catch can test to find that information. If they don't, they can say they do not know their precipitation rate. And we have some great tools in the program to help the homeowner estimate what their precipitation rate is. So they can come through here and select, I have a certain type of sprinkler, and these include, the four most common types of in-ground systems. And then we've also done lots of testing and evaluation of hose end products. So you can see here at the bottom our little oscillating sprinklers here. So you don't have to have a permanent irrigation system to benefit from WaterMyYard. If you have some type of oscillating sprinkler like you shown below here at the hose end category, you can sign up with a hose end account and still receive runtime recommendations. But if you do have a permanent system, you can determine what type of sprinkler you have, and you can help us further refine your precipitation rate, because the amount of water used by rotors, sprays, drip, micro sprays can vary based on the spacing of the sprinkler and the manufacturer, the brand of the sprinkler itself. So you can customize that precip rate by giving us your spacing and your manufacturer, which allows us to reference the manufacturer's product literature to use that precip rate. Or if you don't know, you just know that you have a rotor sprinkler in your yard, that's okay. You can say, I don't know the brand, I don't know the spacing. Kind of a little disclaimer pops up saying, it'd be more accurate if you did, but if you don't, we'll use the average if that's okay with you and move on. We also provide, like I showed here, information on how to calculate your own precipitation rate. So how do you get the most accurate recommendation? You have to know what your precipitation rate is. So users are directed to some fact sheets we have through Extension. We manufacture our own catch cans, and we have a guide here on how to place those catch cans out in your yard and calculate a precipitation rate, so you have a real fine-tuned watering recommendation. So once you've created your profile, you can begin receiving email notifications. And so we can see here's an example notification. And so we can see just a couple of things about this notification you get in your email. One is it can tell you, are you in, or is your service area under any watering restrictions? So that's important to know. And then it tells you what your precip rate is. If you had a zone name, if you didn't give it a name, it's just called default. And then it tells you how much water does your yard need. So we can see here in this example email that no watering is needed. And you can see here kind of in the gray that, well, no watering is needed because you got some rainfall. However, if you did have to, if you did not get rainfall, what would it look like? And so we can look at a different time of year here. We can see, again, the watering restriction is changed here. And we can see for this site now, for this week, 0.56 inches of water is needed. So you need to irrigate 60 minutes this week. So that's the basic tools of the software. And so over time, we've incorporated advanced features.
You can have up in a couple minutes.
Some of the advanced features of the software is that the user has the ability to create multiple profiles here, or actually can, within their profile, multiple sites within that profile. And so if you have, you can see here, for example, we have a controller site here in Wiley, and you can see I put in 2 zones. So if you have sprays in your front yard and rotors in your backyard, you can create multiple zones and receive the watering recommendation for each individual zone. If you have, your home. Maybe you want to you manage the irrigation at your parents' house across town or your office further away. You can create additional controller sites and within your profile to receive those recommendations as well. The user has the ability to select which day of the week they get their notification. You don't always get your notification on Monday if your watering day is going to be on Thursday. So you can pick what day of the week you receive it. That way you're receiving the most recent weather data in your recommendation. And so by default, users get email notifications. But what they can also do is sign up for a text message notification. And so you can get, if you're more of a phone person, like your text messages, you can just get a text instead of filtering through all your emails to see how much water you need. You can see here some simple notifications, no watering this week, or 16 minutes this week for your yard, etc. So some basic impact of the program. Since this the Central Texas program, what I did was I ran a quick analysis from 2020. And so the LCRA sponsors Central Texas. And so they have 8 weather stations within their service area. And we can see here, ET varies a little bit across the Central Texas area. So that's important to know. That one recommendation one ET value isn't necessarily the same or work for all areas locally. And so this is ET from the weather station. But when we look at how much water turf grass actually needs, and we go back to our watering recommendations, you can see this is the ET of the turf grass that we calculated. And you can see that for all of 2020, the most we ever recommended is right here at the beginning of August, was just shy of 0.9 inches of water per week. So often, I see lots of articles or radio ads, different advertisements or notifications to people saying, you need to put an inch of water out per week. You need to put an inch of water out per week. And for certain places in Texas that may be needed, an inch of water, we typically associate that really with high value landscapes or sports field complexes. If you're looking at home landscapes, very rarely do we actually need 1 inch of water per week. So if you're telling people to water an inch per week, you're having them irrigate much more than they actually need throughout the seasons. And so just a quick little summary here of what did WaterMyYard do in Central Texas. You can see here what the ET was from the weather station, how rainfall varied from all the weather stations. And then we can see here how much irrigation was actually needed once you took into account ET, the plant type, and rainfall. And you can see that varies quite a couple of inches across different parts of the service area here. But overall, the big factor here is that we can come over here and see how many weeks do we need to irrigate and how many weeks do we not need to irrigate. And this is where the biggest benefit of WaterMyYard comes, is if we can just get homeowners to turn off their irrigation controller the weeks that we don't need irrigation, we can save lots of water. And so on average over 2020, no irrigation was needed for 23 weeks in the service area. So some places a little bit more, some places a little bit less. But if you think about that, 23 weeks a year, if you can get people turning off their controller, how many homes have irrigation? It's a huge amount of savings potential. And so if we just look at that based on different types of irrigation schemes, this can result in as much as 10 to 25,000 gallons of water per zone, depending on what your existing runtime was and what kind of sprinkler system you have. And so working with my collaborators at LCRA, we estimate cost savings to be, this adds up obviously by following these recommendations and just turning the controller off. We can save anywhere from $53 to over $100 of water per zone per customer. And that's based on, a cost of $521 per thousand. So if your water costs are a little bit lower, you can adjust what you would estimate to expect. So that was the technology. Last year, in July, we launched the WaterMyYard app. And so that's available right now in both Apple and Google stores. And what's great about the WaterMyYard app is it has advanced tools. And what homeowners can actually do in the app is customize their recommendation for rainfall and runtime. So for example, if you know how much rain you receive in your backyard from your own gauge, you can actually enter in your own rainfall to use with our ET data and fine tune your runtime based on your on-site measured rainfall. You can also come in and adjust the runtime by plus or minus 10% if you're seeing, you know, really nice grass in your yard or stressed areas in your yard, maybe due to uniformity issues. You can bump it up or lower it with that adjust runtime feature. So we've continued to further develop the program. And so, as I mentioned, some of the biggest savings in the program comes from really just telling people not to water. And so in 2018, we got a grant to further develop WaterMyYard. And as a part of that grant, what we did was we came up with the idea to develop a smart controller or a smart sensor that would use WaterMyYard to help you manage your irrigation. And we deployed these prototypes across the state, Austin, College Station, in North Texas. And so you can see here, very first version started out very simple. I think it was a little homemade 3D printed boxes. And then by the time we got to the end of the project, we had these really nice commercial looking boxes that we could attach to any controller. And as long as the homeowner had Wi-Fi, we could link their WaterMyYard account with the module. And on weeks that we said no irrigation, the module would override the controller and not allow any irrigation. So that was great that we were able to automatically implement. The homeowner didn't have to actually go out there and physically turn the controller off or on those weeks. And we can see here with our version 2 module here, it actually, in the module itself, it has a rain sensor port. So you're able to incorporate your existing rain sensor additionally. The first version of that, we really couldn't do that. So the prototypes worked successfully. Yeah, that project's kind of ended right now. But like I said, we were able to use those with any existing controller to manage if and when irrigation was needed. So to further build on that, we were able to get an additional grant to take it from a little on-off module device into a full-blown irrigation controller. And so this is our current prototype of the irrigation controller right here. And so my collaborators at A&M in the computer science and engineering department, we just got this one built end of March, and it is currently being deployed on campus for testing. But this controller will actually take in, you know, the runtime, the water restrictions, and some of the advanced methodologies we're looking at for rainfall detection to be a full-blown smart irrigation controller powered by WaterMyYard. And so they're working on some more prototypes, and our plan is to start deploying these early as possible, as maybe May, but for sure June through August, we will have these deployed out at select sites. Also in our pipeline of technology is we're working on a WaterMyYard professional app. Now this is currently in the planning stage. We haven't actually started any coding development, but we're looking at taking WaterMyYard further along. And this professional app would be targeted to professionals and the knowledgeable homeowner to where the homeowner can enter in custom plant types or soil type, the root zone depth, other site factors, and then the app would actually be the controller, part of the controller for the or the interface to control the WaterMyYard controller that we're working on. So that's some of the technology that we're working on further advancing to advance water conservation through WaterMyYard. So
Charles, we're gonna have to move on.
Here we go. Yep, that's what I figured.
Yeah, so you're overtime. So, but thank you so much for that, and we're gonna move right on here. Let's see. Alan Lewis and Jennifer Nations are gonna co-present on the next presentation, and Alan's a PhD candidate in the Water Management and Hydrological Science program at Texas A&M University, and he also earned his MS in program and a civil engineering degree at UCLA, received the AWWA Water Conservation Division Best Paper Award. Together with his team on the Brazos Valley Water Smart program. And he also won statewide recognition for their work on residential water conservation and earned the Blue Legacy Award and the Texas Environmental Excellence Award. Jennifer Nations oversees the water conservation and public education programs, the City of College Station Water Services Department. She serves as the media liaison for water services, produces the drinking water report, provides programs on water conservation, water quality, wastewater treatment, and she chaired the Water Conservation and Reuse Division of the Texas AWWA Association. And in March, she was appointed to the Brazos G Regional Water Planning Group. She has an MS from University of California, Davis, and sorry, a BS from University of California, Davis, and MS in Water Management and Hydrological Science from Texas A&M University. Welcome, Alan and Jennifer.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you for the introduction. First, a quick question. Are you able to hear me just fine?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And you can see my, I'm sharing my screen just to double check.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I know we're a little short on time here, so I'm going to try to make this the fireworks show just before we break. So we've been doing a little bit of work over the last 10 years in College Station involving landscape water budgets, and the goal has been to try to increase efficiency among residential water users. So the purpose is to talk about a little bit of the research that we've done using the data in College Station, the water use data, and some of the interventions that we've been implementing over this period. So I'm Alan Lewis, and Jennifer Nations, as Stacy said earlier. And so with that, just a brief introduction about College Station. So the city has around 40,000 customers, of which 2,000 are commercial and 17,000 are multifamily, but the vast majority are single-family residential. And this map here shows a pretty staggering amount of growth that's occurred over the past 10 years. Surprisingly, more than 27% growth just from 2010 to 2020. So with that, I mean, it's even more amazing when you consider how much water is being used just by the residential sector, which is 70%. So half of single-family residential water use is outdoor, and this is pretty much a recurring theme throughout the Western United States and Texas. So College Station is not that much different. But when you think about how much water is being, how much water demand there is for residential water users, this is the big ticket when it comes to conservation. And of course, the reason why this is a big area for conservation is because of overwatering. Now, there can be many different ways that water is wasted when used outdoors. It can be because a system is not designed correctly. It can be because of a leak. You know, I can imagine many a poor resident dealing with, you know, a broken sprinkler head or a pipe that they have to dig down to replace. But another issue is just simply failing to shut off an irrigation system when watering isn't needed, or running a system for too long and too often. The EPA has reported for many years that roughly half of outdoor water use is lost because of these factors. So as Charles Swanson mentioned earlier, the real big ticket is getting homeowners to water more efficiently by reducing how often they water and responding more readily to weather. So this sort of brings us to the study portion of this work. This is sort of related to the work that I've been doing for my dissertation at Texas A&M University in the Water Management and Hydrological Science program. So my dissertation focuses on outdoor water use efficiency for single-family residential water users. So it centers on water use in College Station, and the main objective is to determine how many customers have been overwatering and how much total water has been wasted over this period of 2015 to 2019. So in the next several slides, we're going to talk about a study involving an analysis of water use from the months of April through November. So that spans the typical growing season. And so it's a total of 8 months. We look at 14,300 single family residential water customers. This excludes customers that have a swimming pool. And to clarify, these are residential water customers who live on a lot with a detached home. So this is single family residential detached lots. So the way we do this, pretty simple, is we estimate excess irrigation, outdoor water waste, however you want to call it, as outdoor water use minus a landscape water budget. So how do we come up with the outdoor water use estimate? Well, we take monthly water use and we subtract a winter average, which is an average of the 3 lowest months from November through February. And so we do this calculation for each individual customer for each month over this period. So how do we calculate a water budget? This is the key here. This is really your baseline for determining outdoor water use efficiency. And I know not everybody is really into math and equations here, but I'll make it really simple. Your water budget is a function of water input and water output. So here we formulate it as a amount of water deficit. So the deficit is created by evapotranspiration, and that deficit is reduced by rainfall. So we apply a coefficient to reduce evapotranspiration because foliar tea is not needed to grow a lawn, and typically turf grass is the most water intensive plant on a landscape. So we base all of our budget calculations according to that. We also apply an efficiency factor, which we assume is 80%. And this accounts for all of irrigation timing and also water application. So it's just a bit of a fudge factor to increase the budget amount by 25% higher than it would be otherwise. So another key variable in this is irrigable landscape area. Now, how do we determine this? We calculate a water budget that's a lot more generous, and we take the total pervious area on a lot. So to come up with this amount, we estimated this based on GIS data from the city of College Station. So here's an example lot showing a parcel area and a living area. These are appraised values. So we took data from the city of College Station GIS for building and driveway and subtracted those from total parcel area to get irrigation area. And this was another study that I looked at for one of my first papers. And this irrigation area is actually closely related to your parcel area and living area. So you can apply a coefficient to quickly come up with this number if you don't have all of these other factors available. So then what we want to do is we want to look at how much water is wasted according to patterns of behavior. So overwatering is not just a function of how much, but it's also a function of how often. So you can imagine this continuum of these two variables, one of volume and one of time. So we want to be able to apply breaks in order to make this a little bit simpler to understand. So we did some analysis and came up with a number that roughly a natural break here is between infrequent and frequent, and frequent being 3 or more months per growing season of overwatering, and infrequent being less than that, so 1 to 2 months. So for the amount, we applied another break at 25% over budget, and this is basically calculated by doing your outdoor water use divided by the budget. So you get an irrigation ratio. So if you are 25% over your budget, then that lands you in one of these categories of that are considered excessive. So this breaks down into 4 different potential groups. So it gives us a very general sense of how customers can be overwatering. So in a very general sense, just taking the 2015 to 2019 citywide totals, we estimated that 7,000 customers, this is roughly 50% of the single family residential customers that we looked at, went over their monthly water budget in any given year. And the total amount wasted was over 110 million gallons per year. So one could easily assume and err a lot that each customer was overwatering an even amount, but that's not the case. And this is why we wanted to break this down into different behaviors. So essentially, this gives us a sense of how much water was being wasted by how many people. And as you can see, the majority of customers were not frequently and excessively wasting. You had most customers wasting a small amount of water. This is less than 25% over their budget, and it only amounted to a total of 16 million gallons. However, you have frequent and excessive wasters. These are people who are at least 25% over their budget and overwatering for 3 or more months. And we have an average of 1,400 of these customers per year, wasting a total of 63, almost 64 million gallons. So 10% of customers accounting for 56% of the waste. So to give you a visual example of what this, to give you, I guess, visual context, we have these customers who are excessively wasting water, at the top, accounting for well over half of the waste. And the majority of customers accounting for a very small amount of the waste. So let's take a closer look at these customers who are frequently and excessively wasting. So what we did here was count the number of years that they were in those categories. So 56 of the customers of the average, there were a total of 4,500 customers that were frequent excessive wasters over this 5-year period, but only 56 of them were in that category for all 5 years. And they wasted a total over the 5-year period of 17.5 million gallons, which accounts for 3.1% of the total volume wasted citywide over the 5-year period. So if you break it down to the amount by customer, that's about 62,700 gallons per year wasted, and about 4 inches of water wasted on a monthly basis. Now, these lots are not all that different from your typical water user. They tend to be a little bit smaller, an average of 4,800 square feet. And it ranges pretty widely as far as how much volume of water they waste individually, from about 22,000 to 170,000 gallons per customer. And that largely has to do with the size of their lot. But we also noted that there were 25 total neighborhoods where these customers were located, but 2 of them were overly represented. So you had a lot of your, we would call recidivists, these customers who continually overwatered, located there. So summing all of these study results into recommendations, First off, customers really should be prioritized for conservation interventions. So what I mean by a conservation intervention is an educational program that's targeted directly towards customers that overwater. And here we would define a recidivist as someone who overwaters frequently and excessively, and moreover, for multiple years. These are your primary targets, and these are all in this upper right-hand quadrant of this overwatering categorization framework. So next up from that is your customers who are overwatering frequently and excessively. This is more general. These are the 10 percenters wasting 56% of the waste. So roughly 1,400 customers per year, meaning you can refine your conservation interventions and budget your dollars accordingly and get the most bang for your buck by targeting customers in this area. But then there are also customers who in general are consistently over their budget. You've got customers in this area. Now, these account for another quarter of the total waste. So in other words, combined, customers who overwater frequently on an annual, well, in any given year, are accounting for 80% of your total outdoor water conservation potential. So you want to target interventions towards these customers. So to give you a sense of what kinds of interventions to apply, Jennifer Nations is going to talk about some of the ones that we've been implementing in College Station. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Alan. So I'm going to speak and then Alan's just going to advance my slides. So these are some of the educational interventions that we do. You know, we have the water budgets that Alan and the other researchers have developed. And then in the coming slides, I'll talk about our Brazos Valley Water Smart program that we have that includes weekly watering notifications. I do irrigation system inspections, and then we also hold conservation workshops. Next slide. So this is an example of a letter that we've sent to people, and it just shows that they are, thank you, one of the targeted interventions. And then let's go ahead and advance to the next slide because that shows the numbers better. So this is just a blow up graph. So I'm so sorry. I think I did not silence my computer. I'm sorry. So we send out letters to people, and this is their usage. This is it's an estimation, but based on their meter reading data, and we show them that, you know, this is what we estimate that you applied to your landscape, and this is what you needed to apply, and so this is how much you over irrigated, and this is based on the lot size and the estimates of landscape area that Alan talked about earlier. So ideally, after somebody receives one of these letters, and or if they've gone to one of our workshops, or if they're getting the weekly watering notifications, this is what we want to see their water use do. And we have seen that with a number of customers. They're over irrigating for a number of years, and then they get some interventions. And then once they get a handle on their water use, then then it's going to drop, and they're going to be, they're going to be in the right. Okay, next slide. And so this is what our website looks like. We've just got a couple of different, there's the URL, and just all the little sprinkler icons. We've got a network of rain gauges, and we have it based on a neighborhood level so that we can, reach out to, we can work with the HOAs and the next door platform and get information out to people. And then it's just red or green. Do you need to water or not? Next slide. And then, so it's, it looks almost the same, but this is West Bryan. So it covers really all of Brazos County. Next slide. Every Monday, we send out an email, and it's based on water collected rainfall in the previous week. So based on, how much rain fell in the previous week, what do you need to do this week? And that way we're accounting for rainfall, but then we also, because we know that weather in Texas is variable, we encourage people to go and check the website throughout the week and then adjust their sprinklers accordingly. And you can see that we give recommended run times. And this is we have some assumptions built in on sprinkler precipitation rate, and then how much water will need to be applied to the landscape in the absence of rain every week. we really just want it to be very, very simple for homeowners. We don't want them to have to think too much about it. Just, red or green, water or not, and then how long, based on what type of sprinkler you have. And so that's why we have the pictures on the website as well. Next slide. Another thing that we do is irrigation checkups, and we've given over 1,000 of those in the past 10 years or so. A lot of them tend to be referred through word of mouth, but we'll also do blogs, utility bill inserts, in the study letters, we do the direct mail to the high water users. And then this is a sample of the checkup that we do. It's not a full-scale irrigation audit. It's it's kind of a train the trainer type thing, where I show people, I run through the sprinkler system, show them how much water their sprinkler uses, read the meter before and after the checkup. And then if they have any issues, they can just give this report to a licensed irrigator if they don't have the skills to fix the problems themselves, and say, here you go, fix this. Next slide. We didn't do the workshops last year, but in previous years, we've had between 100 and 200 people come to our workshops over the summer. We have, we'll bring in a licensed irrigator, and we really want people to get hands-on instruction on, we show them the BB Water Smart website, we show them their controller, we show them how much water their sprinklers use, and then we show them how to fix simple problems so that they have so that they're empowered to save water in their landscape and get a handle on their irrigation system. Next slide. And that is all. This is the members of the BB Water Smart partnership. And if we have time for questions, we can take them later. If not, we'll just move on to the next presentation. Thank you.
I'm afraid we've gotten behind. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank